Well, Zach, why don't we get started? Because your time is valuable and we really appreciate you spending some time. So I think I know most of the people, but let me introduce myself. My name is Joe Shaw. I'm the president of the Jack Graney chapter SABR here in Cleveland. And we're having one of our talking baseball sessions tonight. And it's going to be a very special session because we have a special guest, a real friend of our group, Zack Meisel, who is the Indians reporter for The Athletic. And way back in winter of 2018, Zack came and spoke at our winter meeting, and his talk was very well received. And he thought enough of us that he actually brought his wife to see us and see the talk. So that was something really different for us. And so Zack, welcome to the show tonight. And we're looking forward to having a good time talking baseball with you.
I appreciate you all having me. I mean, it's been so interesting because everything you do now is over Zoom. So I feel like, not that I'm an expert, but I kind of just sit in front of a computer all day. And it seems like whether you want to or not, that's the way everybody has to operate in 2020.
Yeah, well, speaking, it used to be when you stood up in front of a meeting, you were worried about the computer didn't sync with the projector, right? Tonight at 8:09, I realized I was locked out of the Zoom account and I had to make a hurry up call to Phoenix and found out, oh, did we forget to tell you we had to change the password on your account? Oh, here it is. So at 8:12, I was back in. Anyway, it's the new world we live in. So welcome to all of you tonight. We've got Jack Graney chapter members. We've got SABR members in general, and we've got some guests. So you all are welcome, and we're anxious for this to be a true talking baseball session with somebody who's on the inside, whatever that means this year. And I've collected about 16 questions from all of you and put them together, and in openness and transparency, shared them with Zack a couple of days ago just so that he could see some of your thoughts. So that will be our departure point tonight. I'll be the batting practice pitcher, and I'll toss these to Zack and let him hammer them out. But at any time, if you would like to ask a question, there are two options available, or make a comment. Number one, you can type it in the chat box, and Zack and I will be watching that, and we'll make sure those comments or questions come forward. Or number two, if you'd like to take yourself off mute, introduce yourself and ask your question or make your comment, that is most welcome also. We would just ask that if you do want to come off mute, that you try to keep on point so that we give plenty of time for other questions and other comments. So, okay, we ready to roll, Zack?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. Well, since I've got control of this thing, I can ask the first question. And thinking about this season and how do you look at it? I remember back in 2018 when you came and talked to us, two things came forward. Number one, you love your job, you love covering baseball. But number two, you're also a big fan of baseball and the tribe in particular. So as you sit here with us tonight, T-minus 2 days and counting to opening day 2020, how are you feeling about this season, both as a reporter, business side, and as a fan, the human side? Are they the same? Or are they different? How do they compare and contrast?
Well, first of all, let me apologize if anyone can hear my 90-pound yellow lab panting in the background.
That's another new normal.
So I was resistant at first. There were all the rumors over the summer. Would they send every team to Arizona and put them in a bubble? Would they play 100 games, 90 games, 80 games? As that number got smaller and smaller, I was more and more skeptical. And I had an epiphany one day where I just said, you know what? We are all going to remember 2020. And we're going to remember it as being a year that was challenging for everybody, that was different, that made us uncomfortable and made us operate in ways we're not accustomed to operating. And so why can't we look at sports the same way? And I thought, you know what? For once, and probably the only time in our lives, you're going to get a baseball season that it's a sprint, it's not a marathon. And there isn't time to say, oh, it's early, like they'll be fine. And it doesn't matter that so-and-so's in a slump. He'll get out of it. He always does. No, it's full go from day one. And I think if we can just kind of set aside the norms we're used to and just embrace this for the chaotic mad dash that it's going to be, I think it can be a lot of fun. And I know there will be plenty of debate over, is it worthy if you win a World Series? Is it the same as any other year? Should it have an asterisk and all that? But, I'm just excited to see it because it's so different and we don't know what to expect. And normally with baseball, you know who's going to be good, you know who's not. And it's 162 games. So even if you get off to a hot start and your team was expected to be a rebuilding team, like, in the back of your mind, they're probably going to fall back to the pack and vice versa. So anything can happen this season, and you can't usually say that. So just as a fan of the sport, I'm a lot more excited 2 days before opening day than I ever imagined I would be a couple months ago.
How about Zach, the reporter? Same way?
I'm I'm not sure yet. It's weird. We're finally used to the idea of just sitting in a press box. I mean, there have been like 6 of us max, and the press box normally holds 150. So it's very spread out. There's nobody in the ballpark. You can hear everything. It's strange. And it's hard to trick yourself into thinking what you're seeing on the field matters. I assume that's going to change on Friday just because it literally will count in the standings. But it's still not going to feel normal. And, there's nothing like opening day where you just feel the energy. And every bar downtown is packed, even though it's, Monday morning and it's 20 degrees outside. And the ballpark is packed and you can feel that buzz. And to not have that, and assuming we won't have that late in the season when every game, is going to feel like a playoff game because these teams are going to be really close in the standings with only 60 games. It's going to take away a little bit. But at the same time, like 60 games, every game counts as much as 3 normally do. So I don't know. I assume it's going to be fun. I think it's just going to have to, there's a switch that's going to have to be flipped on Friday, even just watching this and convincing yourself it's the same as any normal season.
One of our people asked an interesting question about how can we reconnect with the game in this current COVID world? Caused me to do some thinking. I hadn't thought about it or a reconnection, but how do you relate to that, reconnecting with the game, especially after what's happened in the acrimony over the winter and in conjunction with the virus, et cetera?
Yeah, I wish. Well, first of all, if you watch a game on TV, you're probably going to hear a lot more than you normally would in the past. They're pumping in the fake crowd noise, but it certainly does not drown out all the other sounds you're going to hear. I've already heard my share of curse words from batters breaking their bats or popping up or falling just short of a home run. You're going to get a lot of that. It's tough. The one thing this has done, selfishly, it keeps the media out of the clubhouse. So it's a lot more difficult to write those human interest pieces and allow fans to know who these people are. James Karinchak's going to throw 99 miles an hour this weekend, and he's going to curse into his glove and shout and scream at himself after every pitch. And it's really tough to relay to fans what this guy really is about. And normally that'd be simple because you can go talk to him any day you want. You could talk to other people about him, and you can still do those things. It's just there's a lot more red tape in the way. So, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that I have the answer. I wish the league would. I don't know exactly what the TV schedule is going to look like, but I hope they put every single game on national TV that they possibly can, because a lot of people are working from home. It'd be nice if you're sitting at home at 1 p.m. on a Wednesday and you're doing your work and you can have a random baseball game on in the background. But we'll see. I mean, hopefully, I think it's going to be a feeling out process for everybody involved.
So asking you that question reminded me of something I forgot to say in my opening remarks, and that is that since we are using the SABR Zoom account, we are recording this. The James Karinchak comment revisited for SABR, and this will results of this hour and 15 minutes or so together will go up to the cloud tonight. So you are duly warned and noted. So I think that kind of leads to the next question of one of the people wanted to know what will be different about covering the Tribe this year. And I realize probably a lot of differences, but what stands out in your mind about the different way you're going to have to do your business this year.
So in a normal season, you're with the team every single day from February through at least September. So you're talking 8 months where you see these people every day. They know who you are because you're always around. You build relationships with people. And every afternoon, you go in and you can talk to anybody you want who's around. So it's easier to get to know them, get a better sense for the dynamics of the clubhouse, people's backgrounds, what they might be going through that people don't see on the outside. And to not have that, because we're restricted to Zoom interviews or over the phone, it makes you have to get creative. That's still something I think everybody's adjusting to. Just the game itself, you usually spend about 10 hours at the ballpark every day, at least. And this year, it's different. Like you have to leave an hour after the final pitch. I think we're all getting there later than we normally would, just because there isn't that pregame access. So you try to stay as connected as possible. And there's going to be a lot of texting and annoying players and coaches through the season. And hopefully they'll just understand that's kind of how we have to do things this year. But it can be really easy to feel disconnected from the team and feel like you don't have your pulse on what's going on. So I think it's going to be important to try to stay connected and do what you can. But it's just everything is a lot more difficult. And the other part is it's going to go so much quicker, that we're all adjusting and trying to learn how this is going to work. But you're going to blink and it's going to be the last week of September and, you're covering a wild card race or something. So I think we all feel like we're on a roller coaster and we didn't have time to buckle the seatbelt at the beginning. And we're just kind of clutching on really tight and hoping we don't fall off.
Another question that came, I thought was a fascinating one, of the state of talking baseball on the Cleveland radio stations. Is it different this year, or is it more of the same? Are there more outlets, more opportunities for talking baseball this year? You're obviously one of the more established, recognized, voices of reporting the Indians. Tell us about what that's like. Same, different, frustrating? Fill in the above.
So in the past, baseball and sports talk radio don't mesh because it's 162 games. So if you're going to react emotionally and have a hot take about every single game, which is the job of a sports talk radio host, you're going to be made looking foolish a lot because things change and teams ebb and flow and players get hot and cold. Then you're probably going to run out of things to yell about. However, 60 games, every game matters so much. Every team is essentially tied for first place with 2 months left. Have at it. Go crazy. Give your hot takes. Emotionally react to every single game. If someone blows 2 saves in a row, call for their job. Go for it. I think it's no holds barred in 2020. Sports talk radio can have a field day. And I do think that is one of the elements that will help baseball is there's more reason to talk about it, to devote more time to it, because I think normally, there's so much analysis that can be done with every Browns game because they play once a week and they only play 16 times. And so you hear Browns on the radio 365 days a year. Well, this is going to be a baseball season unlike anything we've ever seen, and every game counts for 3 games basically. So why not have a hot take? Yeah, go crazy.
So another person, and I think this
the entertainer in his short, so that's certainly entertaining.
Someone said something. Kathy? I guess not. Okay. Zach, another question along those lines about changes in the way the games will be conducted this year. Do you think any of these changes have a chance of maybe possibly becoming permanent?
Yeah, the universal DH, it sounds like, might stick. I know that's a polarizing topic. I don't know if there are any National League fans in here. I've never really understood why we have different rules for different leagues, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's stuck around. The runner on second base one's interesting. I haven't seen it play out in person before, so I don't really have a strong opinion on it yet. I don't have a big problem with games that go 18 innings. I think they're so rare that it makes them fun. And a lot of times it's miserable getting there, but once you get to like the 16th, 17th inning, it's kind of becomes a novelty. But, you know, I understand them wanting to reduce the number of those and maybe, you know, maybe that'll be something that catches on. I don't know. That one, I think I need to see that one play out a couple of times before I have a strong opinion.
Okay, so let's talk some about the roster. And we've got one chat box question that's come up from Brian about how many Indians regulars do you expect to play all 60 games, as long as they can obviously avoid the COVID bug?
So it's interesting. So the roster is pretty much finalized as of this afternoon. So, you know, the one thing that stood out to me was they have 7 infielders. They took 3 utility guys, basically, in Freeman, Arroyo, and Chang. But they have 4 starting infielders in Carlos Santana, Cesar Hernandez, Francisco Lindor, and Jose Ramirez, who never take a day off. So it's going to be weird to see how guys adjust to kind of going through the motions for a few weeks after really going through the motions for a few months. And then the Indians have 17 consecutive games before they have an off day. So are they all going to play 17 in a row? I'm skeptical of that. It might be why they carried the extra infielder. They also have 7 outfielders. So I would think that Lindor and Ramirez and you know, the stars of the team would play as close to 60 as possible because, you know, they normally play like 158, and that's equivalent to sitting out 1 game in a 60-game season. So, you know, you can use the DH creatively to give guys a little bit of a breather. The outfield could see some mixing and matching, but I think the infield is about as settled as you can have.
So Alan is asking a question which another person had asked, a variation of the same theme. Who surprised you for making the roster, not making the roster? Any surprises on either side of that coin for you?
Yeah, I think I was still a little surprised Yu Chang made it, just because I don't know when or how often he's going to play. But he and Bradley Zimmer, I mean, they hit their way onto the team with an impressive showing over the last couple weeks. So, you know, it's not completely out of nowhere. There really weren't too many surprises of guys who didn't make it. I know a lot of people wanted Daniel Johnson, but they just don't have a spot for him to play every day right now. You know, I think next year the competition for the outfield with him, Zimmer, you know, Jake Bowers is still around. I think that'll be interesting. But it was once Zimmer kind of established himself, I think that pretty much spelled the end for Johnson and Jake Bowers.
Another name that kind of popped up in a question is Bobby Bradley. Does he have a future in Cleveland? Any feeling there, or is it likely that he'll be used as trade bait, given where we are today?
Yeah, the problem with trade bait is you need him to kind of establish some value, and he hasn't really had too much of a chance to do that. You know, I don't know what's going to happen with Carlos Santana. He's got a pretty pricey option for next season. I don't know what they're going to do with that yet. But if Carlos Santana isn't part of the team next season, it would make sense if Bobby Bradley or Jake Bowers took over first base. That's kind of his only real opening. You know, he's not versatile defensively. You know, Bowers can at least play the outfield. So, you know, that's why they didn't even bring him to the main camp. He's been in Lake County the last few weeks just because they knew there wasn't a spot for him on the roster. So, you know, it's tough. You see that sometimes with guys who not necessarily stall out at AAA, but they just get stuck there. And there's not really an obvious way to get them out of there.
So another one of our group was asking the question about the change in the rules for the 2020 season and the size of the roster, and how might the Indians, in particular Tito, get best use of this organizational depth in a short season. I guess the question, Rudd, is Tito's unique management approach to the game. Can we be in a very strong position this year? Short season, organizational depth, creative ways of using your talent?
Yeah, I'm actually surprised they're going with just the ordinary 5-man rotation. I was thinking maybe, at least a few weeks ago, I thought maybe you'd put Carrasco or Plesac in the bullpen, let them throw 95 miles an hour. And, the bullpen's the biggest question mark, I think. And it would be less of one if one of those starters is back there. And you had Adam Plutko, who could be your 5th starter. But they think the rotation is such a strength that they want to rely on those guys. They're all ready to throw 6+ innings from the get-go. So that's kind of where they think they have a competitive advantage. But I've been racking my brain to try to think of creative ways you can use the roster to get an advantage in this season. But maybe I'm just not creative enough. I don't know. I mean, it's tough. You're going to see some teams do some weird things, probably use a lot of openers, maybe piggyback starters. Doesn't seem like the Indians are going to do those things. I think you'll see a lot of pinch running, defensive replacements, late game pinch hitting and mixing and matching just because you have expanded rosters. But for the most part, I think it's kind of wait and see. There's nothing that's popping out as an obvious move to make.
Talk a little bit about the bullpen. How do you see the bullpen this year?
Yeah, that's the shakiest spot. Brad Hand is the closer, but we don't know what to expect because he had a terrible month of August. They shut him down with the tired arm, and he's thrown 90 to 92 this summer. And so it's basically they're just hoping that the lights come on and he's back to his old self. The bigger problem is how do you get there? How do you bridge the gap from the starters to your closer? Because I think any single person I name, you're all going to want to reach for, a bottle of whiskey when they come in the game. So, you have Nick Wickren and Oliver Perez who have been pretty reliable. Beyond that, like James Karinchak might be the biggest wild card this season because he can throw 98, 99. He's got a killer curveball, but he's got to throw strikes, and he has to prove he can do that consistently. And the most challenging thing for the manager, for the team, is going to be how long do you stick with a guy if he's not working? And, how many times does Karinchak need to have a 1-2-3 inning before you can say, okay, you're our 8th inning guy? How many blown saves does Brad Hand need before you pull him? And is there enough time to figure out who would replace him? So this is the year where you want to have a deep, talented bullpen, and it's the one thing that's a big question mark for the Indians.
Okay. A little bit more about the outfield. One of our members wanted you to talk a little bit about how the outfield is shaping up. How do you see Tito using the pieces parts available to him?
So Oscar Mercado's the center fielder. Tyler Naquin and Jordan Luplow will platoon in right field. And that's not to say that it's a strict platoon. You could see them both playing at sometimes. Franmil Reyes and Domingo Santana will basically share left field and the DH spot. And emphasis on the DH spot because Domingo Santana is an adventure in left field and Franmil Reyes is kind of an unknown. So I think you'll definitely see Bradley Zimmer come in as a defensive replacement, Greg Allen come in as a defensive replacement, Delino DeShields, once he's fully ramped up after he had coronavirus, he'll be in the mix. So, I'm wondering if Santana's going to play more outfield just because if you had to pull him or Reyes late in the game, you'd want Reyes's bat still in the lineup. So maybe you'd pull Santana, get the good defender out there in left field, and Reyes can just DH. But it's weird, I don't think there are as many questions about the outfield as people make it out to seem. Right field is pretty settled. Naquin and Luplow, their numbers were reminiscent of some of the better outfielders in the league last season. What they did combined was right on par with JD Martinez and Michael Brantley. So it's a pretty good match. Oscar Mercado had a nice rookie season. You hope he takes a step forward. And then left field, you're going to get the bat. You're just not going to get the glove.
Is left field where you're concerned about team defense this year?
Yeah, and what's crazy is the other night they had Zimmer in left, Mercado in center, and Naquin in right. And Naquin has one of the best arms in the league. And Zimmer and Mercado can cover, 60 acres of outfield grass if they need to. So, it's a little different when you have Reyes or Santana out there, and those guys like need to call an Uber to go get a fly ball out their way. So yeah, it's you hold your breath anytime. But also we saw Carlos Santana play left field in the World Series. So, it's not like Terry Francona will be holding his breath, but it's a little different than, the bullpen is the bigger problem to me. And at least those two guys, they have the bat. So you're getting something out of it.
One person wanted to ask, who will replace Kluber in the rotation? I think there's a deeper meaning there. Will we have a Kluber level replacement this year, that top tier starter that you can trust every 5 days?
Yeah, so it's crazy. Shane Bieber's going to start on opening day, and a year ago he was the number 5 starter in the rotation. And let alone the fact that he was a college walk-on who almost didn't have a spot at Santa Barbara. And, it's incredible the rise he's had. And he has looked since the first day of spring training like an ace. No one could hit him in spring training games. No one has been able to hit him except for Yu Chang, who's hit everybody during summer camp. And he just has the polish and the makeup like he's ready to take that next step to be a number 1 starter. And that would be a welcome thing for the Indians because Mike Clevenger has all the talent in the world. And when he was healthy last year, he was one of the best pitchers in the American League. Carlos Carrasco's healthy. You hope you can get good outings out of him. And then, the two, they're not even question marks, but it's more just curiosity about how much potential they have, is Aaron Savali and Zach Plesac, who were pretty good as rookies last year. Savali has been pretty much ahead of everybody else, maybe except Bieber, in the rotation during this training camp. And those are your 4 and 5 starters. So there's a lot of talent. It's young talent. I mean, Bieber is the second youngest on the starting staff. He's only 12 days older than Savali, so he's almost the youngest. So it's a question of how soon is that potential realized? Will they all make strides this year? Are there going to be some growing pains? That's kind of the question. And the Indians are putting a lot of stock in their rotation and relying heavily on those guys. So it would behoove them if Savali and Plesac and Bieber took steps forward.
So changing just a little bit, one of our participants wanted to ask you the question to stroll down memory lane for a moment. And do you see any similarities? And you can't say it was before I was born. The 1995 Indians and this team.
Well, they both have a Ramirez.
That's a good start. That knocked that one out of the park. That was good.
I mean, that 95 team was cocky, and they stepped on the field and they laughed at you if you thought you had a chance to beat them. No, I honestly think the 2017 team was not as talented as 95, but in the same ballpark. This team is, I'm not sure.
How would you characterize this team today? What you use cocky for the 95? Are there an adjective or descriptor or two you might throw out again for this team just to start the dialogue about what this team's like?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, they're confident. They are determined. I'm not sure. It's a young team. They've moved on from a lot of the older players in recent years, but you've seen the progress and you've seen how committed, especially the pitchers, they are to learning how to improve and not just get to the major leagues, but thrive in the major leagues. And I think, I think that's not something that's a given with every team and every player in the league. They've got a good culture, and I don't know, it's easy to feel like this is a talented bunch that's capable of a lot of things. I think you can walk into some clubhouses and there might be talent in the room, but it just doesn't feel like the energy is moving in the right direction maybe. And, this team, they think they're going to be good, and they don't really care that fans haven't liked their last couple off seasons and they've had some roster turnover. they're still a confident bunch. Now they're not going onto the field and like Carlos Baerga and looking in the other dugout saying, I'm going to kill you. But it's a little bit less confident than that.
Is there a feeling of you don't feel they're getting the respect as a team that perhaps they think they deserve, or am I putting words in your mouth? They're just listening to what you said and playing back.
Yeah, I think the big thing is that, they had their crown taken from them last year. So I think that, not that it was a wake-up call, because it seemed like they had Murphy's Law following them last season in the first half, but I think they're hungry. And I think for a couple of years there, they knew they had a cakewalk to the division title, and that you could just wake them up in October and, if they didn't hit the snooze button, that's when they needed to play. But they did hit the snooze button. So, yeah, I think there's some hunger to kind of take back what they feel is theirs and to prove that they're still the class of the division. I think everything that's gone on has thrown a little bit of a wrinkle in that it's more unpredictable. And there's a lot more to think about than just baseball and the division, because you've got to think about the protocols and staying safe and all that. So, yeah, I think more than anything, it's just like they want to prove. I mean, a lot of these guys still know what it was like to lose to Houston and to lose to the Yankees, and some of them were around for the Cubs series. So there's unfinished business too.
Okay. Do you feel that some are thinking of the window closing in this opportunity space, or is that in the back of some people's minds, do you think, on the roster, given the financial conversation that's already going on and what likely will happen after this season, whether you agree or disagree or believe or don't believe?
Yeah, I think that's more in fans' minds and reporters' minds. I do think it's true to an extent with guys who have been around a while. Like, I remember Jason Kipnis saying bluntly, like, this was going to be it for him and Kluber and Tomlin and Chisenhall and Brantley and those guys a couple of years ago. Guys who know they're probably not going to be here in a year or two, I think it could be in the back of their minds. But for the most part, like, you look at this team, like, Bieber is going to be here for a long time. And, Savali and Plesac they're under control for the next 6 years. Framil Reyes is under control for the next 5 years. So, like, there's a lot of, like, those players, I don't think they're thinking about it, because even if the team retools and trims payroll and makes trades, like, they still believe in their own ability. But for guys who know that they might not be here in a year or two, yeah, they've probably considered it once or twice. But I still think it's something we grasp onto more than they think about.
And one of our group tonight, Vince, is saying, and a lot of the prognosticators do suggest the Twins will take the division again because of that offensive lineup.
It's fair. I also think who the hell knows what's going to happen in a 60-game season. Yeah. And who knows who's going to stay safe and healthy. I mean, this is so unprecedented.
You're a good straight man, because that leads to Tom's question. What happens if a few players, 4, 5, or 6 players, get injured or test positive for the COVID virus? All bets are off. How do you think that will be dealt with? Both as
that is every team's nightmare, because there is not, the handbook is 110 pages, and I read through it. It's the first book I think I've read since 10th grade English. And this is recorded, isn't it? Don't use that. But
I'll go back and erase it. Don't worry.
There's nothing in there. If there's some catastrophe and there's nothing that says, hey, here's what you do if half your team comes down with it, or if you're on the road and 3/5 of your starting rotation comes down with it. There's no worst case scenario agenda. So that's why every team has its own code of conduct. That's why they all have protocols to try to determine what they can do to stay safe and to keep everybody on the field, because that's going to be half the battle this season. And the good thing is, so far, it once everyone got to camp and they're getting tested every other day, it hasn't been, I think, as bad as people were expecting. We'll have to see what it's like when teams travel and they're playing on the road and all that.
Well, we had more questions, as you might expect, on one topic than the other. Francisco Lindor. What does the Zack Meisel crystal ball say about Francisco Lindor and his future with the Indians? I'm trying to put two questions together here and give you maximum freedom on how you would like to address and answer it.
He is everything a team would dream of in a franchise player. He checks every box from an on-field perspective where he hits for average, hits for power, can hit anywhere in the lineup. He wins a Gold Glove with his eyes closed, it seems. And he has the personality to unite people, to attract fans. From a marketing perspective, he's a dream. He's bilingual. He can connect with anybody in the clubhouse. He is unquestionably the team's leader. He is when you say to any owner or any general manager in the league, these are the qualities you're looking for in a franchise player. If you had to pick one person to give all this money to, he would be the guy. That said, he's probably not going to be the guy in Cleveland. And I just think it's going to wind up where it wouldn't shock me if they traded him this winter. I think the only thing standing in the way of that, and it's a pretty big thing, is we don't know how this is all going to affect teams and the way they operate. And is every team going to be trying to shed payroll this winter? What's the free agent market going to look like? What's the trade market going to look like? We don't know. It's unprecedented. So I'm now, I would have given it a tiny chance. Now I would give it a small chance that they just keep him and let him walk after 2021. Maybe try one more time to work something out next spring. But, I'd be absolutely floored if he was a member of the Indians past 2021.
What do you think about the possibility of him, if the Tribe were, and we don't hope this, get off to a slow start, that infamous 5-game losing streak that the media's been talking about could take you out of the season in a short season. Do you think there's a chance he could go before this season is over, or is that, you didn't mention it, so feel obligated to ask you?
Yeah, it's not impossible, but it's close to impossible. First of all, the trade deadline's August 31st, so you're going to have played about 35 games by then. And there are going to be teams after 60 games that don't even know whether they're good or not.
Yeah.
And at 35 games, it's going to be really, really difficult. So it would have to be a team that knew it would be good in 2021 as well. The other problem is if you make a trade, the Indians are going to want young players. Well, there's no development going on this year. There's no evaluating prospects. There's no scouting. So it's really difficult to trade your franchise player and get back some young guys who you're evaluating based off how good they were a year ago. I think you would feel more comfortable just trading over the winter, doing more due diligence and not have to try to do something on the fly here. The other thing is do we know for sure that we're going to play a full season? So there's a huge risk if you make a big trade and part with a couple pieces of your future and acquire Lindor, and then the season, everyone contracts coronavirus and there's no season. And it's if there was no season, the Dodgers would have just given up a lot for Mookie Betts. And for a minute, that looked like a huge risk until they were able to sign him for 12 more years. But there's so many hurdles that would have to be cleared in such a short amount of time that I'd be pretty shocked.
Okay. One of our participants wanted you to talk a little bit more about the topic you just touched on, the development, I'll call it, of the next generation Indians. And in particular, how do you see the Indians intending to develop their first and second year prospects with no minor league season this year?
Yeah, it's so disappointing, not just for the Indians, every team, and more so for the players who, these kids just get drafted and, normally a couple days later you'd sign and then you'd go to whatever affiliate they assigned you to and you'd start playing games, and now they're playing video games. So there's going to be instruction via Zoom, and these guys will all find somewhere to train, to work out. They'll have some people at the Arizona complex where they can work with some coaches, but it's crazy because you have a couple hundred minor leaguers and only a select few get to come to East Lake to work out at Classic Park and be on call all season. And the rest, it's basically a lost year. And not only does that hurt development, it hurts how easy it is to trade. It hurts kind of your future planning. The Indians have a lot of like 19-year-old position players who are really well regarded. And this is a year, when they get to like A ball and maybe push on the door for double A, that's when you find out, one, how much talent they might have, two, when they might be able to make that jump, if they have a legitimate chance to make that jump, you think, and three, they establish trade value and they boost your standing in all of these media outlets, farm system rankings. So, the Indians lose out on that. All those guys kind of have to twiddle their thumbs for a year. That's one of, if not the most kind of disappointing things about the way this is all played out.
Brian would like to ask an interesting question about Brad Mills and how the team has replaced Brad Mills. That they brought in another coach from a number standpoint. How are his duties as bench coach being addressed this year? And will it make a big difference, do you think, on the team without having him there by Tito's side? I'm paraphrasing Brian's question a little bit. I hope I got it pretty accurate.
Yeah, so Terry Francona will miss him more than anyone. They've been best friends for 40 years, and a lot of times in the dugout when there's a decision that needs to be made, Brad Mills kind of speaks it into existence before Terry Francona has a chance to even say what he's thinking. So, they're all missing him. Mike Barnett he was the replay coordinator. He stepped in more and has kind of taken charge of the summer camp. And they're all kind of splitting the duties. I mean, the one thing with Brad Mills is he was just on top of everything from a scheduling and logistics standpoint and knew where everybody would be when, knew everyone's programs and where everybody is just in terms of their daily activity. So there's a lot of organization that has fallen onto people's laps who aren't used to it. And they did add 2 coaches to the staff this spring. So Justin Tooley, who's a hitting guy, and Kyle Hudson, who Mills used to set up the defensive alignment for the outfield during games. Kyle Hudson does that now. So they're all kind of picking up the slack, and they basically divvied out all the responsibility.
Perhaps not a fair question to ask you, but I will nevertheless. Is Brad Mills still there at a distance, coaching, so to speak, at a distance, supporting, or is he just gone for this season, so to speak?
Yeah, so he went home to Texas, and in the spring they lost his grandson, who is the son of Bo Mills, who was the Indians' first-round pick in 2007, maybe. And he was 18 months old. So he left spring training. He had not returned at the time spring training was shut down, just spending time with family. And he came to Cleveland in early July. They got everything set up, and then he kind of knew he needed to be back home. So after a few days, went back home to Texas.
Okay. Well, that's thoughts and prayers with him and his family. Elizabeth has an interesting question following up on the development of the young players. That there was some talk of expanding the Arizona Fall League at one time, but has that fallen by the wayside with COVID, or is it still a possibility that there will be an Arizona Fall League of some size, shape, and form that could recapture some of the year's development for some players?
I hope so. I don't think they've reached a final decision on that. I haven't heard one way or the other, but that would, and I think it'll also depend on how smoothly this season goes and just the major league games and whatnot. But that would be a really smart thing to do if they can do it safely. So
it's still a possibility, bottom line.
I think so. Yeah.
Good. Okay. Let's see. So a question about the Indians changing their name. Obviously, we need to spend.
I think we're out of time, actually.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, just the perspective that you would like to share, and maybe throw you one other pitch. I was fascinated by the owner coming to talk with the team and with the coaching staff. And that was just as it was reported by Jimmy Donovan. That was a fascinating moment. And I was just curious about your perspective. Any way you'd like to address this question other than time's up?
So, I know this is the most polarizing topic there is in Cleveland, except maybe Browns uniforms. But I have intentionally not felt strongly one way or the other just because I knew I'd have to cover it objectively. And I knew once you get into one camp, you're going to have people coming after you no matter which side you're on. So from an objective standpoint, like I can tell you it's going to happen. And it's probably going to be a long process. I think they've known internally that it was going to happen for a while. It really picked up steam over the summer, just with everything going on. And, it's an important decision. It was the team name it's been the team name for 105 years. And they want whatever they change it to be the team name for another 100 plus years. So you have to get it right. You can pick something that everybody hates, and that's going to turn people away from your product because, even though this is a sensitive topic, it is a marketing opportunity. You can sell tons of new merchandise and, you can find a way to appease a lot of people. But it's, there were a lot of people who said, why are they talking to the players about this? Like they should be talking to the indigenous people or to the fans who spend money at the ballpark. They'll get to that. They wanted to talk ownership, front office to the players, get their opinions on it first, just because they didn't want to do this during the season. So they want to get it out of the way now. So it's going to be a process. I'm curious to see how much they'll involve fans because they do, they send out surveys for everything.
Yes, they do.
Like you probably filled one out about what type of mustard you prefer. So I would hope they send some out
tomorrow
about the team name. So we'll see. But it's, it's once the Redskins decided, and they were forced to by their sponsors, I think everybody kind of knew who was next. And I don't think it's too surprising to anybody given everything that's gone on.
Okay. Well, you got a little bit of a kudo here, and well-deserved from Andrew. Says Zach, love your podcast with Andre. The
That's Zach Jackson, but I'll pass along.
The best organization in sports. But so tell us a little bit about your podcast.
The podcast they're referring to is Zack Jackson and Andre Knott.
Okay.
Jackson covers the Browns. I've got an Indians podcast with TJ Zuppe if you want to check it out. But they do an excellent job. The A to Z podcast. I'm an avid listener.
Okay. Well, then I got to go back and ask another question. Someone said, didn't you write 2 books? Are you a writer, a book writer also, or is that another another Zach in our world?
No, there's one conveniently placed right there. It's red. I think Vince was busting my chops because I said I hadn't read a book since I was 15.
10th grade.
That's still true. Let me tell you something, and you know this, like when you write a book, you do not want to ever reread that thing because you are so sick of every word in it. But I've written 4 books. Wow. 2 of them don't waste your time with. But the latest one is Cleveland Rocked, and it's the story of the 1995 Indians. And it kind of relates to why I don't really think the 2019 Indians remind me of that team, because that team was so distinct that you could write a book about it. Will the 2019 Indians, will you be able to write a book about them? I'm not so sure.
Very good.
I wrote another, and I haven't cracked either of them since.
What's that?
I said he's absolutely right. I wrote 1 book and co-wrote another, and I haven't cracked either one of them since.
Yeah, you get to the point where you write and you rewrite and you rewrite and you rewrite until you think it's the worst slop that's ever been written ever, and you just have no interest in even glancing at the book by the end.
Have you written your last book, or do you think there's another book in the Zack Meisel arsenal of the future?
I always, after every one, I say I'm done. and then they always pull me back in. I don't know. I have an idea for 2, but I need a break.
Well, I have to tell you, we have a person who disagrees with you about that book, who said that book is great and it was given to my dad. And it gave him a chance to relive some of his memories and pass them on. So there's a kudo for you ought to read in that. It was very nicely written by Elizabeth.
I will say I appreciate that, Elizabeth. I will say it was convenient to have the world shut down when you have a book coming out, because nobody has anything else to do aside from read and watch Netflix. So that was convenient. But that 95 team, I mean, the book could have written itself. That team was so much fun. You know, talking to all those guys, the personalities were just outstanding. And I think everyone in Cleveland felt like they knew who these people were, just because you could relate to them. And they were having so much fun. And it was the first good, fun, exciting team in Cleveland at the ballpark in 4 decades. So who didn't want to gravitate towards those guys?
I think those are fond memories in each of our ways for all of us who had a chance to be there during those years. So let's talk a little bit about looking to the future beyond this season. There's been a lot of acrimony, right, between the billionaire owners and the millionaire players, as it's played out in the media, right, so to speak. That's going to hang around for a while. What does it say to you about what will happen in 2021 and beyond? What does your crystal ball tell you, if anything, there? Is it still too cloudy?
Tells me that I might need to find a new hobby for 2022. I don't know. I think everybody's concerned about a work stoppage. The CBA expires at the end of 2021. And who knows? I mean, there was so much animosity this summer, and we're lucky we have any baseball at all. And there's a lot more to sort out next time they come to the table. So I don't know. You know, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to have a little bit more of a normal season next year. Who knows what things will look like come February or March, let alone 2 or 3 weeks from now. But beyond that, it's tough. You know, I don't know. There's a lot that can change with the game from 21 to 22, and you know, there's going to have to be a lot of progress made on both sides before you feel confident that they're going to work something out in time.
Well stated. Now, from the fan standpoint, you know, they're obviously during the height of the emotional period. I've had it with baseball. I don't want anything more to do with it, and I'll never watch another game. And now, as we are in the week of the startup, God, I'm glad baseball's back. I mean, you can hear that on sports talk radio. To me, it's been amazing to see that mood swing. But do you think baseball has hurt itself a lot, a little, or just momentarily in what has gone on up to date? And
probably more momentarily. I think it's hurt itself just over the years with poor marketing and, you know, like TV blackout rules, things like that, where you've seen the NBA and the NFL excel in finding their way into your homes on your TV screen. Baseball struggled to do that. And so I think that's played a bigger role. I think, you know, if people said that the negotiations this summer turned them off and they were never going to watch baseball again, they probably weren't going to watch baseball anyway. I think the people who are really craving baseball, who are craving sports, anything live in general, they'll be tuned in. And you think about just, again, the circumstances of this season, you know, how many fan bases can say starting Friday their team has no shot? Baltimore, Detroit, KC, maybe Miami. I mean, even teams that weren't supposed to be good yet or just are okay and kind of lousy in general, they have a chance this year. And so I think there is an opportunity to attract some fans just from the standpoint of fielding a competitive team in a market that no one was expecting that team to be competitive.
you touched on marketing baseball and the shortfalls. And one of the things that I don't understand is, and I'm somewhat sarcastic here for a moment, you will see people in the federal witness protection program more frequently than you will see the Mike Trouts and others off the baseball field and so forth. Why can't baseball and the leadership of baseball see that lost marketing opportunity? What is standing in the way of such an obvious change that could be made to really, I would submit, have a positive impact, if not a significant positive impact?
I don't know. I know the one thing I think about is, before the pandemic, I'd go to the gym every day right around 11 a.m. And I've done that for a decade because I like to work out while The Price is Right is on. It's me and all my favorite friends who are much older than me working out at the same time every day, watching The Price is Right. But on the TV, they would also have ESPN on every day. And it would be one of their debate shows where they have two people screaming at each other about something that doesn't matter. And they would never debate baseball, never talk about it. And like the World Series would be going on last year, and they'd be talking about, what the Dallas Cowboys did 4 days ago, or what LeVar Ball is up to. Like, they have struggled to get themselves onto the platforms where young people are paying attention. And the NBA and the NFL have, maybe it's just more conducive to debate shows and, funny videos and tweets and whatever else. But baseball's really struggled with that. And I don't know what the answer is, but they need to do whatever they can to find their way onto those shows and those social media platforms that the young people are paying attention to. That's the issue. There aren't many 20-year-olds who love baseball more than any other sport. I think that's the biggest problem. So it's something I know they've been trying to solve for years. It's just they've done a poor job at attacking it.
Well, I think in fairness, our organization, Society for American Baseball Research, is dealing with the same thing. How to attract the young people who, in this case, hopefully are interested in baseball into a primarily older person's organization. What are the keys to the kingdom to do that? So it's, I think you're saying it's probably a lot harder to do than you think it is and easier to criticize than it is to correct. So, well, we've kind of gone through our questions. Let's open it up. We have a few minutes left tonight. Any other questions? Oh, wait, here's one. What do you think about the impact of the imminent contraction of the minors? Yeah, that's an excellent question, worth a moment or two.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a few years before we know the full impact of that and of just losing a year of development for pretty much everybody. I think, it stinks for those small towns where, we've all been to Lake County or somewhere like that, where it's just fun to sit in the stands. You pay $5 for a ticket, you pay $2 for a hot dog, and it's just a nice summer night. You watch baseball and you don't know who 85% of the people are on the field, but it doesn't matter because it's baseball and it's how you turn people onto the sport. So from the last answer I just said about growing the sport and attracting new, younger generation of fans, this is not one way to do it. But I don't know, I don't know the full impact, and I'm curious to see, if they do anything else to kind of compensate for it.
Okay. One person, Jim Nuff, makes an observation. Friend of mine here, no comparable age. You need to get the kids to play the game like we did and when we were kids way back in ancient history, so that they would get more involved in neighborhood pickup games and that sort of thing. I've heard that statement more than once. Kids just aren't playing baseball anymore. It's too expensive. Being one reason thrown at you. I'd be able to remember that from my youth, but
those are my fondest memories as a kid. I mean, we lived on a cul-de-sac and our driveway was steep, so we would have home plate at the end of our driveway so that, if you airmailed the catcher, it would just roll right back down to you. And I mean, every single night from spring to fall, and those are the best memories. And I'm with you. I wish I could say I'd drive around various neighborhoods and see kids out playing baseball, but you just don't see that.
No, you don't anymore. It's very sad. Elizabeth's got a good question. Do you think they can get a deal done on the expanded playoffs? Get it done before tomorrow night? I guess there is a deadline tomorrow night, correct?
Yeah, I don't know.
I guess I didn't appreciate that. Thank you, Elizabeth.
I don't know the answer to your question, but I hope they do. I think it would be one way to get rid of a layer of randomness that this season's going to have. You know, if it's the type of year where some team like, I was going to say Toronto, but they don't even know where their home games are.
Wherever they will be.
You could see some team come out of nowhere to go 34-26 and make the playoffs. And then all they have to do is win a 5-game series, which a lot of times is a crapshoot, and they're in the ALCS or the NLCS. If you get an extra layer of the playoffs, if you have 3 more teams in each league, I think that would help eliminate some of the randomness, and maybe you'd have a more legitimate champion. I think they know that too, so I do hope so. And it would give them more revenue. You'd have more playoff games, and all they care about is money, so go for it.
Yeah, well, let's hope they do get something like that done. Any more questions for Zack that you either want to type in or go off mute and ask him directly or comment? Well, Zack, I think we're going once, going twice. Why don't we call it a night? I want to thank you on behalf of us. I know you gave up an evening for us. This is the second time you've been part of our SABR Jack Graney chapter extended family. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did, and hope that this is a good season for you, the reporter, and you, the fan.
Well, I hope, I know it's going to be weird, and I know everyone wishes they could be in the ballpark. It's going to be so strange. I can't stop thinking about how weird it is. But I hope we can all kind of just ignore everything going. You can't ignore it, but at least take the time to just escape everything going on and watch, because you've got a pennant race on your hands starting from day one, and we'll probably never be able to say that again. So I'm getting a little more excited by the day for the race. Hopefully you guys are as well, and I appreciate you guys having me on. It's a blast.
Yeah, well, we hope we compared favorably with when you're on 92.3 The Fan and get interviewed by Bull and Fox or whoever. We hope you enjoyed it tonight too, because that's important to us. That it was would be an enjoyable experience for you, and you're getting lots of nice kudos in the chat box. A lot of nice, well-deserved kudos.
Much appreciated. And I'm just glad that those guys, when they yell about someone giving up a run, they'll be justified, because it matters this year. You can react. Go ahead, shout your head off every day on the radio.
Well, why don't we call a conclusion to a very successful and enjoyable evening. And as Andrew says, we look forward to reading your stories in The Athletic. And when I sent out the email this week, I was typing so fast, I promoted you to being in The Atlantic magazine versus Athletic. I was quickly countermanded on that, rightfully so. So your stories are excellent, and I think we do look forward to reading them and getting that insight on the Indians. So you have a successful season also.
I appreciate it. I'll give you guys a little teaser since I just got off the phone a little bit ago with John Adams, and everyone has been asking, is he going to be in the ballpark, or is he going to be banging his drum? What are they going to let him do? So he had some interesting things to say, and it's a teaser, so I won't tell you, but you can read it on The Athletic in the morning.
Ah, very good. That's a nice way to end a very good evening. We gave you a chance to sell your books too, so come on. Okay, Zack, thank you so much. Have a great evening, and thanks again for your time.
Appreciate it, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, and thanks you all for coming.